Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So I wasn't sure if I was going to make a video tonight or not, but I have decided to, and we're gonna try and make this a short topic. Let's see if it's possible for me to keep this short. In a recent video, I talked about how I thought that there might be circumstances soon in the story, soon as in Wano, which might exacerbate something that has been a problem for Luffy. Basically, we talked about how Luffy's lifespan is continually being drained. Whether it's from all the fighting that he does, the moves that he uses like Gear Second, all the injuries, whatever it might be, there's lots of things occurring in the One Piece story which is shortening Luffy's life. And so I think that most people agree that this is something that's going to come back up, that Oda isn't going to ignore this. It's going to become a huge focal point of the narrative at some time. And so in the Law video that I made recently, we discussed the possibility that maybe Luffy's life will get rejuvenated by Law using his abilities on Luffy. Essentially, Law sacrifices himself so that Luffy can live on and accomplish his goals. The other thought is that Luffy losing his lifespan due to all of these various things is something that in the future maybe Chopper will be able to cure. Now this isn't exactly straightforward, right? Because, if you're losing actual lifespan, but you don't have what would be typically defined as an illness or a sickness, then maybe Chopper can't do anything. In this respect, I don't really have an answer. It all depends on how Oda wants to go about setting it up. Maybe all of this damage that Luffy is taking, this reduction in his lifespan, will end up becoming some kind of disease. Maybe not. But that's not really what we want to talk about today. What we want to talk about is something that I think is being set up in regards to Wano, or the Kaido arc, which might make this worse, and might actually begin the setup for when Oda really wants to delve into the narrative of Luffy losing his lifespan. Because right now in this story, there's just offhand mentions constantly of Luffy losing lifespan, but at some point in time, Oda will really need to go in on this. So let's start at the beginning. In Impel Down, Luffy very nearly was killed by Magellan. Luffy ended up fighting him, and using his poison devil fruit, Luffy essentially had a 0% chance of surviving. But it was really fortunate that Ivankov happened to be there in order to use her hormones to give Luffy some chance, but it came at a cost. Eva said herself that Luffy would lose 10 years from her treatment. But there was some benefit to be had from this. After this, Luffy was essentially immune to all poison. But fun fact, he wasn't immune to all poison after this, because even recently, just before the Whole Cake Island arc, Luffy ended up eating a fish whose skin was so toxic that even just a bite would kill a giant. But Luffy, with his immunity, actually was able to survive for some amount of time, but it was still going to kill him, until Revujo was able to suck out the poison. But I think that it's definitely possible for Luffy to also have developed some kind of antibody for this poison as well. Essentially, at this point in the story, Luffy is a poison tank. There's two things that Luffy resists more than anything else. It's electricity and lightning, and poison. And guys, I want to be honest here, I think that this is very purposeful. Oda is steadily allowing Luffy to climb the poison ladder. Basically, he wants us to know at this point in the story, there's nothing that Luffy cannot resist, poison-wise. Through Magellan, he has immunity to all different kinds of poison, and then from this fish, which might be the most toxic thing in the entire world, he might have also gained some antibodies for that as well. And so this leads us into the New World. And Luffy ended up encountering for the first time the mad scientist Caesar. There's lots of things that we could take away from this arc, but I think one of the most important is that Caesar created weapons that people actually purchased. And one of these people who purchased some of Caesar's weapons was Kaido. We know this for a fact because we know that Kaido has an army of Smile Fruit Eaters, but on top of this, Jack also used one of Caesar's gas poison weapons to annihilate Zou. So Kaido and his crew definitely use these things. And again here, I think that this is very purposeful. Oda wanted to set up them using these same kinds of weapons when Luffy and the Strats and everyone else encounter them in Wano and wherever else. And so straight up guys, these weapons would be devastating. The Straw Hat crew and all of their allies and everyone else can be essentially annihilated very quickly through the use of something like this. This is essentially why people are speculating that Caesar will continue to travel along with the Strats in order to counter his own weapons. We can see that using his powers in Zou, he essentially reversed the effects of the weapon. So we know Caesar can do it. So people expect Caesar to again counter these weapons when the Strats need to fight them. And I think here I agree with the thought. Now, of course it's possible, right, that these Strats bring some equipment which will help them breathe, like for instance, gas masks. The Minks for sure know that Kaido's crew uses these, so they'd be foolish not to prepare for it. Frankie was talking about building some kind of weapon which might counter Kaido. While this could be many things, it's possible this could be some kind of gas countering tech, like a gas mask for everyone. Definitely seems possible to me. But I think that you can't rely on a gas mask. If an entire island at some point in the story is eventually gassed, and you lose your mask, are they just going to die? This is why I think Caesar is necessary. Now granted, it doesn't have to be Caesar, even going with the idea that, Frankie will be able to build something. Maybe he builds a giant vacuum which can suck out all the gas. That also seems possible to me. But that's not really where I want to take this speculation. Of course, there's many ways in which you could possibly counter it, but I think that Oda would be foolish to ignore his own setup for how he could approach the dangerous gas weapons, which is that he can approach them through Luffy. Luffy, who is immune to essentially all poison. This couldn't be any more perfect. Guys, I really feel as though in Wano, or maybe after Wano, whenever Oda decides to make the Kaido crew use Caesar's gas weapons, I think that Luffy will have a solo fight within a cloud of gas, and he will be able to survive because of the immunity that Oda has set up. This is such a strange theory, right? It's essentially a theory about the environment of a fight rather than the fight itself, but it's just so interesting to me. It's at times like this that I really wish that I could draw and give you an illustration of what's inside my mind. But to me, the environment or the scenery is just so awesome. I can picture how Oda might go about drawing it. But the only way that in my mind this works is if there isn't any immediate counter to the gas. So even if Caesar were to tag along or they would have some sort of counter, it wouldn't be readily available. And so Luffy would have to deal with fighting many opponents within the gas. Maybe this is even sort of progresses from fodder to there's a main boss somewhere. Obviously with the details, all we have is our imagination. But I want to take this back to what I was talking about earlier and Luffy's lifespan. Luffy is essentially immune to all poison at this point in time. But I don't think that means that this gas will have no effect on him whatsoever. Even looking at how the poison on the fish worked, it was that Luffy was immune to poisons which allowed him to survive for longer than he should have. But he wasn't 100% immune to it. It could still kill him, given enough of it, and enough time. I also think that it's really interesting that Oda avoided really testing Luffy against Caesar's poison weapons in Punk Hazard. The closest that we ever got was when Luffy punched Caesar. And so the gas that Caesar was using at the time was stated to essentially paralyze people. So the gas would paralyze them, they would get stuck in place, and then they would be essentially covered in a layer of it. And so Luffy's hands actually came into contact with this gas weapon, and we don't get to see any mention of Luffy's hand going numb or being paralyzed or anything, which I do think speak towards Luffy's potential immunity or resistance to the gas. But to wrap this up here, guys, I think that if Luffy fights for an extended period of time within a cloud of gas designed to kill people by Caesar, I don't think that Luffy will be able to tank it completely forever. I honestly think that it would be awesome to see Luffy essentially fight an opponent while trying to resist the poison, as it slowly and steadily begins to affect him. And I do think that this could be just another way in which Oda saps a bit of lifespan out of Luffy. As we were talking about, if it is indeed Law who's going to give his own lifespan to Luffy, using the powers of his Opi Opi no Mi, then to get to that point you would first need to hammer it home. And I think that a way in which it's possible to do that, if all of this goes down against Kaido, is if Kaido uses the gas weapons on Luffy, draining the last bit of extra life that he had. But anyway guys, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about today. I tried to keep this into a short video, and we're at 10 minutes, so I guess that was inevitable, right guys? There's no hope for me. But as always, let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree or disagree and why. Just share your thoughts. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always guys, have a wonderful day.